pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
State flags throw me.
Right, 8:30 snuck up on us here. Looks like everybody is accounted for. Any additions to the agenda? Start with the consent agenda. I don't think they're check registers, so there must not be.
I did see a check. I don't know if it made this list, but I recently received a check from support. So I have a financial stake in Klatskin Builder Supply and would not be voting on that specific item.
Do we want to start with items A and B first and then handle C separately then?
Would approval of the minutes for December 24 and the finance report from January 25. B and B.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And item C.
Move to approve consent agenda C.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And abstain for direct conflict.
Comments from the public? We have one public.
One public.
Anybody online? Don't see any hands. Right. Okay, moving on to old business. Marina update. Okay. Airport update then, please.
We have an update. Morning, parents.
Good morning.
Great. There are no pending food defense applications. Today will provide an update on the runway rehabilitation project. We began this process in 2022, preparing for our 2023 FAA grant cycle. Currently, the Port and Century West are in the third and final stage of the grant application process. The FAA has identified the construction phase of our project as the lowest priority Tier 3 project, which focuses on smaller scale but less essential infrastructure improvements. Because we are a Tier 3 project, the FAA has encouraged us to plan for long bid holds and winter work. Because winter work paving projects are nearly impossible for slurry seal coating, we're looking to possibly push the work to summer 2026. It is important to understand as we proceed through the grant application process, we need to remain flexible. Our plan is to go out for bid in April. If we are funded earlier in the summer, we would potentially have the opportunity to start that project. However, this is unlikely as the FAA typically awards Tier 3 grants in July to September every year. That's the same thing. Which will push our project to summer 2026. Just a review of the timeline. January to March each year, we're prepping, getting our draft scope ready for an application finalized to send to the FAA. In April to June, the grant application is submitted and we open the bid window. July to September, grants are awarded, contracting begins, and then we would do a notice to proceed. And October to December would be construction completion and grant closeout. We all know that that's not typically how it goes, but that is their cycle for these grants. So we are planning to submit the application in that time frame and then go to bid in April. The design and scope, do you guys have any questions? So the design and scope of the work indicate a runway closure lasting approximately 75 days to project completion. Port staff have met with Century West to explore strategies to minimize the impact of the closure. Some of the options being considered include phased work, designated open hours, incentivized workflows to accelerate completion. Additionally, I have been in contact with other airports to gain insight on effective mitigation strategies during similar projects. Pearson is closing on February 24th. I think I put that in my report for up to 8 weeks for electrical work. They will be, their strategy is they'll have open hours in the evenings, no night flying, landing, and some weekends open.
Open hours in the evening, but no nighttime. So what's evening?
Before it's dark.
Yes.
Before dark.
I know.
4:15, yeah.
Yeah, 4:15, the dark.
No, that is dark.
Yes. There will be a clear distinction between the two phases of work. The pavement phase will be visibly disruptive and more intensive, while the electrical upgrades, though less visibly intrusive, will be equally critical to the overall operations and safety of the airport. So there will be the visible crack sealing, messy, slurry that will be first. And then it will be followed by electrical upgrades, which will be excavating and opening up conduit, replacing conduit, which won't be as visibly impactful, but we still can't open when there's excavators and people working on the runway. While we continue to identify effective closure windows, I want to emphasize that safety of our users remain at the highest priority. I understand the temporary inconvenience of the project may cause, however, long-term improvements for airport will significantly outweigh the disruption. And I will continue to provide regular updates as we coordinate with the FAA and Century West to final timelines and ensure that the smooth project execution as smooth as it could possibly go. So right now we're just in this phase of we're going to submit our application like we've done every year. And wait for the FAA to review, open for the bid for the full project, and then hopefully be awarded in early summer. But on all honesty, as I have spoken to the FAA, with the Department of Transportation in flux right now, we just don't know.
Right.
There's a lot of unknowns in the timing. So I will be as transparent and open and communicative as I can. Do you guys have any questions?
What do you consider to be the possibility that we won't get this grant? Is that?
No, we won't.
We will. Okay.
It's the frequency of runway rehab as far as how many years? When was the last time?
I think the last time was in 2005. Ocean Marion was here. 2005. Yeah, 2005.
Okay,
Yes.
so almost 20 years.
20 years, which is the useful life, and it will be another 20 years if we keep our user base under 40,000 pound, small single engine planes. We get those larger aircrafts putting stress on the runway that will deteriorate
Quicker. Yeah.
Is the advisory committee, I assume, is on board with all this?
I have been giving them regular updates. This is going to be this is the biggest update that I will give them on the 27th that we of a change, and they're aware.
I might even suggest if it's logistically possible to invite a few of them to the meetings when you discuss how to minimize so that they can be on board with some of the decisions, and then the hard ones, they can at least help explain to the pilots, hey, we were in the meeting when this is why we can't open it.
Right, absolutely agree.
And by the way, Aurora is doing theirs, you didn't say this already, this summer?
They're in a similar position. They are tier 2, which means they'll get notified sooner than us with their funding, basically awarded the grant sooner than a tier 3. My hope is that they do theirs this summer and we do ours next summer, in terms of just being an option for pilots to come out here and vice versa. That would be wonderful for our users, is just another option that we're not closed at the same time. Although theirs is just pavement and ours is pavement and electrical. We're going to be upgrading our taxiway lights, our runway lights to LED, which is amazing. Along with other lighting upgrades.
But under similar circumstances in the past, do we have tenants that will actually move their plane for the duration of this?
It's up to them individually. They have the option to do a tie down or if we have space, a hangar available, they would have the option to do that. But in either way, they could come here for a short period of time, or our pilots could go there for a short period of time if necessary.
And do we facilitate that at all?
That's up to them.
Up to them. Okay. Thanks.
Give them plenty of notice is key, which.
Absolutely. And I just recently, as I think you received, I sent this week out my newsletter that I've been sending to our tenants with updates, all of them updates, which you have all seen in your report as well.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
It, highlights the fact that we are very, very much intertwined with FAA, but with how, we run the airport and money we get to be able to do the things that we do, or, well, that we have to do out there. Again, let the runway go into disrepair, good conscience. So it's interesting though, we look at it, you can see there's a lot of the, I don't know if you call them the tar, fills and stuff. When you drive between St. Helens and Scappoose and you hit that one stretch of road and the sun's right and you can see, someone else walked and did all that, but there's so much of that. Anyway, you can only do that for so long on a runway, limping along. And while we would like to not have to close the runway, we also want to make sure that it's safe for of course necessary. And actually, we were thankful for the FAA because I'm not sure we could afford to.
Oh, God. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, moving on, Lignetics update. Looks like there's some work happening out there, but it's not.
Yeah, the work happening out there is not related it is related to the upgrades. It's related to the scrubber upgrades. That's, we're doing some septic work and piping to support that. And I did send you guys that we did receive good news from Mike Sale of Lignetics on 12/31 that they are moving forward. Got their I got the wrong email up. I did forward that around to you.
Yes.
And so, yeah, they're gonna hopefully work will be starting on schedule as they planned and get the new equipment put in place. I'm not sure exactly the status of the transformer yet, but Lignetics has agreed to do the groundwork for that on their own. And then work with PUD for schedule the switchover and delivery switchover. So that's good news. Anything you'd like to add, Kim? We have Kim Carver here from the city.
The only thing I have to add is they're going through the permitting process right now.
Okay.
Now,
The localized
yes.
permits. Thank you. Thank you very much. And that is with the city. Some of those are with the cities.
Yes, yep.
All right. Well, it's very nice to see some progress on that. That's
Yeah.
great. Moving on to new business, we have committee and organization assignments. Does everybody have a chance to look at that? Have any thoughts or questions? Or requests?
Lots of opportunities.
Yes. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah,
about that?
so what I wanted to find out here, and forgive me for. I would have printed that out, but I was trying to reduce the amount of stuff that we printed out. As you can see, if you guys are looking at it, we have representation at BDIC, Beaver Drainage Improvement Company. And, Elliot is obviously good going to those. If we do have Chip and Nancy that try to attend that one. If anyone would like to attend the others, the CDIC, the Class I one is one meeting. Right, around the same time as the other landowner meeting for BDIC in March. Not a lot of action there, nearly as much as BDIC, obviously, but the SDIC, we have Scappoose Drainage Improvement Company. Amy monitors that agenda, and we attend when we feel it necessary. Also, just curious if anyone would like to be the designated commissioner for that. For when stuff heats up and there's issues, it'd be nice to have some elected or an elected there.
I'd be happy to do it unless you want to. No, can't.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'd be happy to do it.
I'd also would like to attend the BDIC and that we don't have quorum issues there because it's an advertised public meeting. Is that correct?
Right.
Yep, just gonna sit together and make it look good.
Don't talk to each other.
We're all mad.
Okay, the other one.
People in the room, okay.
We have on here, Plum River PUD highlighted. I think we're fine there. Again, we're monitoring the
the agendas and we'll attend. Also, I will reach out to you folks to see if any of you want to attend when we go to give a port update. So when I
Yes.
plan to do those at a lot of the municipalities, but then, Columbia River, Class 9 PUD, obviously chambers and things like that. But I'll definitely loop you in to see if anybody wants to attend when we do those. City of Columbia City, same thing. It's not necessary. We just watch you guys' agenda, see what kind of fun you're up to over there. If there's anything on here that you see there's a blank where you'd be curious, also let me know. Some of these have typically been staff level attendance, but there is the opportunity for the electeds to attend and that's a good outreach on different things. It's nice to have some safety in numbers.
Mhm.
City council, I think we had, before we had Robert on there, and then I didn't know, Brian, if that's something, an area.
Rainier City Council.
Yeah, like if needed, I can attend that one.
Either one of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, again, it's if needed.
And I can help out with that too.
Okay, sounds good.
They're at all at this point too.
Rainier. Oh, we got rid of it. Anything we have.
Oh, did you say, yeah, we got you down for City of St. Helens.
I have been looking at the agendas pretty much, so, yeah.
One thing I would say about Rainier, with like Chip said, you don't have property, but they consider Port Westward affecting it quite a bit and they like to be updated. Employees come from there and the rail, of course, and the traffic. So they're very interested in Port Westward.
And I believe I reported the last time that I went there and gave an update, they were asking when the port's going to get back into Rainier. They want to know when we're going to start to.
One of the counselors took me to task on, well, we paid our taxes for all those years and had a reminder, we sold USG, we had the Rainier Bank building, it didn't work out. I said, hey, we'd love to get back out here. Challenge being is you have land behind a dike, which we have 3 other areas where we have properties like that. It's tough for us to want to pick that up.
Some of the history that needs to be reminded of Rainier is, I mean, we'd love to do things there, but prior to USG going in, Prudential Steel worked hard to get that lease. I'm glad they didn't. They didn't last long, but they required purchase and the port refused to sell because they wanted to own the land. And many of us, me being one, came to the port meetings and said, look, do what you need to do for these industries. If they need to sell. So we sold a real nice asset there, but they reap the benefits of that every single day. So, so there really is port property there. It just got sold.
I did remind it that we had sold that.
It's kind of like, what have you done for us lately? Yeah.
Well, every year they pay taxes and they moved the city limits, but is USG in the city?
No, they're still outside. But the last map I saw anyway, they still had their own carve out.
But it's certainly good for the local economy.
Yeah.
And the other footnote with them is they often show us properties up there that are commercial. And we're saying, we're more development industrial. Commercial's not really us.
Case in point, that area right by the bridge. At one point, I think when I started, I'd asked Pat about that. He's like, yeah, well, it's already a different zone. We already got one rezone we're going through. And I want to take that on. And they were close, but with some, in our time, they were close with getting some action there. Some
Traffic issues, I believe.
And the wetlands got remapped and then it was gonna be, they had to dance around some of the wetlands. So I think they had some fatigue with the developer. But I'm hopeful about Rainier. I'd love to see us back in there. That's what I told them. I said, I feel the commission, you're in our port district. We'd like to be here. It just has to be right. And right now we're not in the business of buying property. So
We got the other end of the spectrum there, that the Teven property being for sale.
yes, that is advertised.
125 million.
We got our friends at the Port of Vancouver send us a note. Hey, this is your port district. Want to make sure you know about it. We know that.
Oh, yeah, we know. Would you like to contribute to our GoFundMe?
Yeah, exactly.
Love to have it.
It's interesting. Executive session, interesting.
Let's see, going down the list, I think that was it for, and like I said, if anything on there that you're like, hey, what's going on with this association or organization, we could definitely invite you to come and we're always happy when you guys want to.
Email me that list.
Absolutely.
Yeah, even if something wasn't in yellow, but if you're interested, I would say, I know the ones I'm signed up for. I'm not stuck to them. If somebody else is interested in doing it.
I was digging the list.
Back me on that email, would you, Sean?
Yes, you
I
bet.
looked at it when it came through, but I don't remember.
It must have been a little while.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, some of the ones, Nick, I'm sure you're probably.
In the packet, I shouldn't have.
So, Maritime Commerce Club, I can only say that because of your work, but,
Sure.
I think Nancy, you attended some of that.
I think I
stuff.
just found it.
Hmm.
Finally.
Yes. I'll just go to the packet.
Well, I can send you just that too.
Down at the
Myself.
I found middle of the packet or so.
Just ones and zeros across the email, try not to print much as we can. Yeah, that's it for that.
Okay. Any further discussion or thoughts on that? If not, we will move on to strategic business plan implementation. Gina and Amy.
Keep on with our goal, making sure that it doesn't just collect dust on a shelf.
Good.
I want to point out too, hopefully you guys feel this way. I don't feel like this is like, oh gosh, this obligation, we got to click this box. This has been really helpful for us as we, what do we do? What should we be doing? So not that we had the question of that, but it's definitely helps us target things down and think about being intentional about what we do. So I really appreciate them going through and oh, by the way, it said this and you do this. So.
I find it extremely helpful.
Slideshow at the bottom.
Yeah.
You can click at the bottom or the
Exit in
top.
the center, that center box. Yeah.
Sorry, I just can't hear you.
Sorry.
You can minimize the other thing, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. All right, good morning. Amy and I are back with our updates on the implementation and goals of the strategic business plan. And then just to refresh, there's three strategic priorities that were identified in the strategic business plan are invest in development and modernization of existing properties, development of projects at Port Westward, and then purchase additional industrial property throughout the district. Next slide. So the 5 elements that must be included in a port strategic business plan in the state of Oregon are a capital improvement plan, management plan, financial plan, environmental plan, and marketing plan. And each element outlines the port-wide goals and strategies under each. In November, we began this process of reviewing each of these with the commission and the progress being made, starting with the goals 1 and 2 of the capital improvement plan. And today we will conclude this section with goals 2 and 3 of the capital improvement plan and also review the port's environmental plan. And just to review, capital improvement plan identifies highest priority capital improvement projects to encourage economic development and the continued success of the port. It guides the priorities, but does not require the port to make improvements. Again, it represents the highest priority projects. Next. Okay, so diving,
Nancy.
So we're gonna dive right in with goal 3, which focuses on our 2 assets, the Scappoose Airport and Scappoose Bay Marina. Keeping these, maintaining these to meet market demand and improve revenue streams. It's gonna highlight, take a long pause in these last 3 words. I think it's very critical to always remember that that's the goal when we're talking about these 2 assets, improving the revenue streams. So strategy 3.1, supporting the improvements that were identified in the airport master plan. I believe, and hopefully you all feel this way, that you're being kept in the loop on the progress that we're making on the airport. So as Lacey walked through 2025, we're going to complete the generator project. We have a delivery date. And we will also complete the final little section of the west side pavement maintenance project. 25-26 will be the runway rehabilitation, invitation to bid, construction of some variety of some timeline based on the FAA. 2028 will be taxiway alpha reconfiguration and the lighting on that taxiway. So the 2028 project will be the design engineering phase. 2029 will be the construction phase. That's what we have planned out of the airport thus far. Additionally, not supported necessarily by FAA or Oregon Department of Aviation grants, but a potential revenue generating project that we could look into as an organization in the design build of additional hangars at the airport. We currently have a wait list of 5 people. And we're at 100% capacity. The only empty hangars that we have out there are inaccessible. So jumping forward to strategy 3.2, completing phase 2 of Marina improvements. So again, as I hope you all are pretty well in the loop, the in-water work is on hold until we get the Marina feasibility study back. And then strategy 3.3, budget for operations and maintenance, by identifying projected cash requirements. So this is going to be part of Guy's ongoing discussions, presentations to do. We're starting the budget process sooner. We have a very thoughtful capital improvement plan process. So I'm really looking forward to getting started with that. We have a meeting actually this week to start it.
Real quick, we just pause on 3.2, as they've discussed, living, breathing document. This 3.2 could potentially be one of those that we take a time out on after we get the Marina study, see what it says, and that could be one of our first that we adjust. I think, depending on how what that finds and what the study says and what we decide to do.
So goal 4 of the capital improvement plan focuses on modernization and development of existing port assets that lead to economic resiliency, that increase the port's capacity to carry out economic development. Basically, again, invest in projects that will increase revenue and enable the port to continue to reinvest. Strategy 4.1 encourages specific capital investment in projects that increase resiliency and capacity of existing port infrastructure. And this circles back to our strategic priority to invest in development and modernization of existing port properties. Go to the next slide. So some of the priority projects we have that we've been working on under goal 4 are the Beaver Dock modernization project, bring the dock back into full compliance with the seismic resiliency mandated by the Oregon State 1567. The project will, of course, retrofit the dock to meet the new seismic standards, modernize the mooring arrangements, and upgrade fire suppression systems. The port was recently awarded the $2.7 million Connect Oregon grant to begin this work, and we are currently working on a federal grant to get additional funding. The cleanup of the Hope and Talbot wood treating site. We've applied for the EPA brownfield cleanup grant for the cleanup of Upland Area 1. The cleanup of this site will give us significantly more land available at Railroad Avenue, as it's adjacent to the 17 acres that are already for their action. And we will find it out in May whether we are selected for funding for this grant. And if we are, we could begin cleanup as early as the summer. And if we are unsuccessful, then we will have to continue to apply to find funds for the cleanup. And Columbia City Dock is on here, operational improvements. This project has not yet been started, but is a proposed priority project for the upcoming budget year. It requires, the dock requires some maintenance. It needs to have 8 to 11 piles replaced and repaving on the pier. When complete, it will add capacity to the dock. It will be able to serve additional barges for perhaps a second tenant. Currently, the dock's only user, Clearwater, receives about 34 barges a year. Increase our capacity there.
So, and then hopefully, again, you're well aware of the status of the next three, the generator, the west side pavement maintenance, and then the runway rehabilitation, skipping down to the McNulty Industrial Park development. This is a project that we've been talking about for a long time, but design, engineering, and construction is planned for 2026 to 28.
Do you know what? Have you picked what?
Well, so it's interesting, we've spent, there's a construction in progress amount of money that's already been spent on that site. You guys have all been around longer than I have, you know that, but it was based on tenants that the entire design was based on tenants that would not necessarily be the makeup of the tenants today.
Thought they were at the time.
So, for example, bowling alley,
Right.
Composites Universal Group, those wouldn't be, so it was designed for a makeup that
That isn't,
may not.
doesn't apply.
So,
So are you getting any interest in, I mean, I see those beautiful signs and the nice land that's sitting there, and I think, yeah, I'm just surprised that that isn't of greater interest.
it is interesting. I it really resonated with me actually at the last meeting when Nancy mentioned that, ever since I've come to work here, I've been surprised with the lack of movement, economic development movement, real estate movement, because you can compare apples to apples on things, lay down yards and the cost of them in Portland versus the cost of them here. And buildings and office space and anything, and it just doesn't get taken down as quickly as you would ever expect. And I don't understand what
Okay.
the barrier is, and one of the only.
Because rail is there.
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah, it's real serve, it's real serve. It's obviously in terms of permitting, not being in the metro area is a huge boon. The only piece of sort of insight that I've gleaned, which I don't think you take this for what it's worth, I don't really know yet what it is, but is that out-of-state companies seem to not bat an eye at the idea of coming to do a temporary, lease here for something.
But they aren't.
Well, we had like Nichols Pipeline, they've been here for 2 years, that was a Texas-based company, they came just to do the pipeline burying project under the Willamette. And I was explaining the distance of a drive and they were like, it was nothing to them. And I've talked to actually several Texas-based companies about this site, and it's usually, that's never the consideration, is the distance from the metro area. So, but for some reason, local-based, metro companies see it as being unfathomably far.
Oh,
Well, if I could just add, yesterday I read 2 different articles, one about Port of Woodlands now full, their industrial parks. I'm like, good job, Jennifer, yay, you guys. Port of Klamath got an aggregates product company there. And I don't necessarily have to tell you guys that they are right on the arterial, I-5 is right there, mainline rail there. When you think about us, we're still class 2 last mile railroad. So unless it's unit trains, they gotta break manifest cars and then bring them out here. There's additional handling and just this additional much travel for those local companies are like, well, that's 2 hours of a driver to get in and out of there. I feel like there's a lot of considerations like that until they're capacitized in the metro where they're just bursting. I feel they're gonna still keep looking for the close to PDX, close to I-5, because it still is 30 minutes into traffic center.
But you look at Beaverton, they're not necessarily, much of Beaverton is not close to major highways. Is it that we aren't business friendly? Is it that we're, as a whole, there isn't enough marketing? What do you think?
I would add one piece to that. I can tell you from experience is you guys suffer a little from it in St. Helens Scappoose, but if you call a Portland company and ask them to come to Alaska to do a water location or some kind of specialized they think it's like an overnight trip. How far out is it? Well, it's like 8 hours to get out here. It's 1 hour to get home.
Oh, you're in our service territory.
Yeah, in fact, we just ran across that with some repair folks. And like you go clear across Portland all the time. Oh, yeah. Well, this is faster, easier, and
Right.
but there's a perception. So maybe between the Chamber of Commerce and us, some of the public stuff we should do.
You could do a funny, some funny.
Not as far as you
ads.
think.
Right. It's-
That's a good campaign right there, Robert.
Not as far as you think.
I think, Sean, you're pretty nail on the head with it. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, it's transportation. And when you start adding dollars and cents and we're kind of geographically, right, just farther enough away from I-5, right? I mean, so I think that's a lot of it. I think the businesses we do have that are attractive, it's waterfront based. I mean, shipping, obviously, but it's just so much money to get in that game. It's a whole, we're servicing what we have, right? I mean, but to have a company come in, I know Woodland did, they have the aggregate over there. And I don't know how long it took to do that. I know one of the commissioners over there. I mean, that was a big deal having them put that in there. So, but again, I-5.
When the state of Oregon came out and certified that land between, I think it's McNulty and the highway there along the rail, is shovel ready. The whole premise of doing that was just a formality because they had a server farm lined up that just guaranteed, it was just absolutely guaranteed to go in there. And it didn't. So that was Business Oregon. So one, I'm cautious about Business Oregon when they have something guaranteed, but I don't know. I know server farms work well on the east side because of the cheap power and all, but we have pretty cheap power here.
Oh, gosh, yes.
And I would think that sometimes they're going to need capacity closer. So I don't know if that's something to look at as well.
Whatever happened with Project Spice?
Still mulling, there's still
Yeah, they're still.
the negotiations at their level, at the spice level.
Oh, I didn't do it on purpose. You did it.
Sorry.
What?
It's cute.
Marinating.
Okay, next slide.
Well, one more thing. I guess another thing we may think about as, this is living, breathing document is our stance on selling property. Does it make sense for us to potentially look at strategic pieces? Everything's on the table, but yeah, I know that's a last ditch, but if it's a USG scenario, well, they're gonna come only if they sell the property. I mean, depend on the property, obviously. But that could be something we could look at for sale or lease as we market.
Without having the portfolio, in front of us of what we have. I mean, I don't know how everybody else feels, but if we had small residential pieces that we knew that are not going to be, in the port's mission per se, pursue something more commercial, to add to a more commercial piece. I just don't know, but without having a list of them, if we had, obviously we're not in the business. I mean, we are, but we're not of having small residential housing type pieces. I know we've acquired a few that are, but I don't know of a project that we had a project lined up, I guess we needed funds for it. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but.
I think we spend too much time on, everybody does, it's not the fault of the port, but residential leases take up way too much time.
Oh, gosh, yes.
And worse yet is those pasture leases, time versus revenue. It's horrible. If it's a place we're holding because it's developable, I get it. You might as well get the extra revenue. But if all we're going to do is get a pasture lease, I would sell that baby tomorrow.
Thankfully, to my knowledge, we only have one residential lease.
Out by the airport.
And that is such an eyesore.
What about next?
Every time I drive by it, I'm like this.
Grow the shrubs a little taller.
We have.
And that roof-
That's what I do.
Yeah.
But there's no lease on them.
Right.
Nobody's leasing these.
Residential properties.
But they are residential.
Erickson Dike and then the Clunky Farm,
There's no one
the
actually.
shaft
living there
property,
physically.
nobody's in there, and then the Burdette property. Miranda, or Cole,
But she's the only.
she's in the lease.
Yeah, and again, unless we had some all ears, if somebody has a suggestion on what we would do with it or,
Yeah, and some of those are strategic, obviously, too, where we're at, that property specifically is I think we bought it with airport funds, most of the property around the airport, we bought with airport funds, or FAA funds, sorry. So yeah, there was some strategy there as far as increasing our buffer, and but yeah, we sold that little piece off First Street, which I'll report on a little bit later. We have some movement on that case. Yeah, I think where it makes sense, maybe we look at it, and I don't necessarily want Amy to spend a lot of time on that, but if it's definitely not the wish of the commission, but if we thought we had something strategic and it made sense, or a deal that could hinge on a purchase, I think we want to think about it. So
I would think if we
Dave
were to,
Maloney has had that property across from where he lives for sale for so many years. The sign has just become part of the, and it's like, yeah, and it's like no movement there. So it's like, what gives?
Yeah, I guess when I mentioned, it was just more, if it's a burden to the port to manage all these small pieces, and we know we're not hanging on to them for a specific reason, like you stated. I mean, what are we doing with them? I guess at the end of the day, I mean, we're just having them to have them, or no.
I would think if we were going to sell some property that we would reinvest in a piece of property that maybe fits
Exactly
other properties that we have or something like that.
Guy and I had this conversation, we went to lunch the other day, and his point was, that maybe the caveat is it's reinvested into revenue generation, whatever we sell, or I think Robert used to say, the property purchase.
At one point, I had an actual line item in the budget, and they always want to streamline and pull those out. I get that guy, but I always wanted to identify if we sold property or equipment, that it went back to property improvements in the portfolio. I mean, you might sell property and
Build on
improvements or something. At least the taxpayers' portfolio was kept whole.
Keep going? All right, so let's move on to the environmental plan. This is another element of the strategic business plan, like Gina said, so it's just another one of those sections. This is goals and strategies that are meant to support port's commitment to environmental stewardship of our properties. So, goal 1, maintain compliance with all applicable environmental laws.
Always a good plan.
Always a good plan, yes, sure. The primary action item on this is the proactive collaboration and the staff time that we spend on the DEQ remediation of the Pocan Tablet site. We also are beginning to work on with DEQ and the EPA on the former Multnomah plywood site, which we refer to as Multnomah Industrial Park. So that'll fall under this as well. Strategy 1.1, establishing best management practices to ensure compliance with current environmental regulations. On this, if you've taken a look at our leases and gone way to the back, there's always a very lengthy section related to environmental regulations and strict allowances that the language can be updated by the court without having to go through any kind of lengthy lease amendments. So I think that that's important to mention. And then strategy 1.2, develop and maintain collaborative working relationships with regulatory agencies. So some of the agencies that we work with in this regard, DEQ, the Oregon State Marine Board, Oregon Department of Agriculture, the Environmental Protection Agency, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, this has been a big one, National Marine Fisheries Service, there's lots of others, but those are the main ones that we go next slide, please. Goal number 2 commits the port to being a good environmental steward as we develop our land and marine facilities. There's a lot of text on this one, but strategy 2.1, be an active participant in membership organizations that advocate for environmental legislation. This is groups that we're involved with, like Oregon Public Ports Authority. Sean's serving as president currently for the year. Pacific Northwest Waterways Association, and then the Special Districts Association of Oregon. Strategy 2.2, work with local partners to identify port participation in environmental enhancement projects. This is actually a really fun one, and we have a lot of great examples of projects that we've worked on with local agencies and partnered with them on. So things like the Scappoose Soil and Water District's oak habitat restoration and the mustard seed
Garlic.
removal and garlic, yeah, okay. The Oregon Department of Ag Torfied demonstration that they'll be doing in April, that's a great example. My memory was hazy on this, but I believe that I recall we worked with the 4-H Extension Office on some kind of an invasive species
Yeah.
project in Milton Creek.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
A little bit. I think a little bit got done, but there was some time that ran out on that one. It was,
yeah, so things like that are great. The St. Helens Parks and Trail Commission and their interest in building the trail on the Railroad Corridor Industrial Park. And then we had the Lower Columbia Estuary Partnership Grant, which gave us funds to install those stormwater filtration boxes called gratis boxes at Marina. Strategy 2.3, implementing climate action policies in everyday decision-making and high-level portfolio management at the port. So this is obviously a long-term strategy, and when Sean said that we are enjoying at staff level going through this process of updating you, this was one goal where we were like, we should really thoughtfully think about how we're going to implement this strategy. But one piece of work that is ongoing currently, something that Elliot's working on, is the water management conservation plan with our tenants at Port Westward, which is all about reducing their water usage as industrial tenants. So renegotiating that contract and trying to minimize the water usage there, which is also in their benefit. Next slide.
Good job.
Great.
Questions? Thank you.
Navigate the course.
One comment would be, and I think next year I'll have this input to the strategic plan, but you and I, Sean, have talked a little bit about some engagement with the tribes, and I'm wondering, yeah, it would be neat to be able to start off like that goal 2.2, the environmental part. I mean, tribes is, I think, more archaeological preservation, but I think they're also very concerned about river quality.
Yep.
So
Do you remember the
the lady from PDX,
the Callis tribe.
Clackstar tribe, we're working on with them on some signage at Scappoose Bay Marina, the nature park. They had historically had some signs out there, some signage about their presence out there. You might remember Fish and Wildlife had talked to us about doing something possibly at the Bradbury Slough at our dock there for some fish enhancement. That since went away, but with the activity on the site with archaeological findings and working with the tribes going through how we deal with those findings out there on the site, Nancy and I were talking about the possibility of seeing if the tribes had any interest in something fishing related on that the dock side of Bradbury Slough. And so I still have that on my tickler list to try to find the right people at the tribe, and it may be the gal that we like that comes to PNWA. At least I can start with her, but seeing if there's any interest there. I mean, that's a good start. We know that the Railroad Avenue with the creek coming out there must have had some presence, hundreds, not 1,000 years ago with people there. So maybe there's some more signage and some tribute to be paid there once and if the trail gets built going around there. So I like the idea. I'm not necessarily trying to buy our influence with the tribes by any stretch of the imaginations, but they've been here for millennia, and working with them to have a presence again, to show the historical nature of where they're at.
The tribes in support of our competing brownfield grant. I got a list of all 5 tribes from the EQ, and I emailed them all to invite them to open houses and let them know what's happening at the Railroad Avenue site. They, they don't do the attended, but they're all aware.
oh, that's right, so it's archaeological.
What has happened with the issue out at the dike? Or the artifacts.
Yeah, we have an agreement with a company, Next and us are sharing in the cost of, because it was they were found along what would be the entrance to the next facility in Warren City subleased mint field. And Warren has agreed and not farming in the particular area currently. And their investigation will be ongoing where the consultant will work in coordination with the tribes on what they do out there as far as the findings.
Are they actively digging there?
Not currently, yeah.
But they're planning on it?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they want to do some more investigation, see how widespread or not the artifacts are.
And what were the artifacts?
Some stones used in maybe
Fishing weights.
yeah,
yeah.
fishing weights and then hanging keeping the nets way down. Apparently, and I don't mean to minimize it, but some of these things are more common than others. And depending on the type of artifacts, sometimes they're buried in place and acknowledged. Sometimes, it's if it's bones or that's a completely different story,
Right.
obviously. But because I don't want to minimize any of the findings, but depending on it, it could determine the outcome. Yeah.
Right. It's not that we minimize it, but it's graded, so to
Yes.
speak,
Right.
as to the
Yeah.
importance
for-
No
by the
damn.
tribes. Yeah.
Yeah, the freshet flooded that every year, so. Yeah, like Chip was saying, probably the significant artifacts aren't there because that flooded
It wasn't there.
every year. I mean, when you read Lewis and Clark, that thing was flooded.
Well, I mean, in theory, the railway was the line of the high water. That was where it was put, 100 years ago. Before dams. 100 years ago.
Yeah.
All right, more to come on that. Yeah. Looks like Gina's staying, yeah. Community giving policy. I'm excited to have a full commission chat about this one.
Okay, so at our June 12th meeting, Commissioners Fawcett and Buell volunteered to serve on a committee to review and revise the port's current limited donation policy. We have since met and drafted a giving policy and process for your approval. The resolution creates a new community giving policy, which will allow the port to annually budget funds for community giving in the form of events and donations that support the port's mission. It would also create a community giving committee comprised of 2 port commissioners and some port staff that would meet on a semi-annual basis to review and evaluate donation requests and recommend donation recipients for commission approval. Donation requests approved by the committee will be brought to commission as a consent item and approved in public meeting. Commission will establish annual community giving budget as part of the regular budget cycle. So every year you guys can decide how much we want to allocate to this. In your packet, you will find more detailed description of the proposed eligibility criteria, submission procedures, and the draft application form. And if the commission wants to move forward with this community giving policy, the funding allocation for the 25-26 year would be decided in June during our next budget. And first applications could be reviewed as early as August for September awards.
Thank you. Any questions or thoughts? Do you have a chance to review the policy and application?
Looked like you all did a really good job.
Gina did a good job.
Yeah. And that's hard. It's so hard because the people who come are very worthy. Well, who am I calling?
Calling somebody important.
So nice work. That's not easy.
Yeah, there's some nice sideboards and it still gives us some flexibility. I think it turned out really well, personally.
I do too.
So if there's no other comments or questions, I believe we can pass resolution 2025 if we're interested in doing so.
Move approval.
Or 2025-01. Yep. Moved by Robert, seconded by Nick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Good job.
All right, nothing else other than executive director report and commissioner report. John?
Okay, good morning again. Richards, go down the list here of notables. I wanted to point out, not on there is on January 10th, the report proceedings held in Clay County whereby Ryan Ehrenfeld, one of our former tenants down there near our First Street location was permanently trespassed from the Railroad Avenue site. Not a former tenant.
Yeah. He had been charged with criminal trespass in the municipal court. And, from back, you remember back when Bloom Heron signed their new lease in August?
Yeah.
He had been cavorting around there, muckraking and whatnot. And, so they finally charged him with criminal trespass and that went to trial on Friday. In the end, they resolved the case by he signed an exclusion agreement, excluding him from Railroad Avenue forever. So that was a good result. I was pushing for all 4 properties, but that didn't really apply to the case. It was kind of an overreach, but again, doesn't take care of what has been called 7 Starless leaving problem, but I don't believe they live in the area. So anyway, the upshot is the husband has now been excluded from Railroad Avenue.
This is Starla's husband? Okay.
Yesterday, Amy and I met with Paul Vogel. We have a irregular lunch meeting, get together, we call it. And it's always a good time to catch up with Paul and make sure we're synergizing on things that have to do with core tenants and just business updates. Being on the board of that and get a pretty good head full of that at the CET meetings, but it's nice to have Paul away from the meeting. And anytime any of you guys want to come to that, it's I think the second Tuesday. And I may start just reaching out and seeing if anybody has time, wants to come, because it's always good to sit with Paul when he's not, on the podium.
I think have one once in a while.
Yeah, I would as well.
Okay, so reach out. We have the next PGE port meeting tomorrow. And I just wanted to update you in case that sent around the rezone thing around the holiday as well. That has been postponed. We don't know the new schedule just yet, but just to recap, they got their water quality certificate. They expect to get the EIS draft from the Corps this quarter, best case, and then eventually getting that released to the street for public comment, probably in the springtime, I believe is the latest estimate. With the idea of hopefully having comments and everything back by fall. And that's the current timeline. So we'll see how long it takes for the EIS to come in. The water quality certificate came in a week early, so maybe that's a sign of other things.
Yeah, it's just 3 years late so far, but.
And these will be things when we go back to DC, we'll be talking, again, beating the drum with our delegation and agencies. With the amount of time it takes to get things permitting. So moving on here. South County Collaborative is this Thursday. I don't know if I told you this or not, but with Rachel Berry leaving the city, I asked Gina to kind of step into the herding of that group. And it is the South County staff level, higher level staff folks getting together, make sure that we're working in concert with each other on things that where we overlap and no one's in the dark about certain things. So that's a good group. In the past, we've actually gotten together with electeds on a sporadic kind of basis with something to report. I won't say that there's anything in the works currently, but when we get something to actually either work on together and or report back, we'll set up another get together. But we already also have the city county dinner, which could be a good place to share some of this stuff. So yeah, we'll kind of work on that. It's been, I think you might have attended 2 of those get-togethers, and it's pretty well attended. But yeah, you definitely want to have something to say to bring the electeds together. So we'll make sure we have something worthwhile. Bob and I are both on the Oregon Public Courts Association Legislative Committee. Me by default being on the executive committee of that, but Bob by default of helping out with some antitrust legislation and having this legal brain handy. Those are bi-weekly meetings on a Friday where we meet with our OPPA director, Mark Landauer, and he gives us an update on bills that affect courts and how we want to potentially vote on some of those. They can be pretty interesting. A lot of stuff, I think there were over 1,000 bills that he was looking at that were introduced as part of the start of the session, which hasn't officially started yet. So yeah, there's a lot to sift through and see, and that we rely on him a lot for weeding that out and showing us what to focus on and where do we want to stand on this? Do we want to oppose this? Do we want to call our, the local delegates to say this is not good because of this, or by testimony and all that. So nothing new to you guys. I just want to make sure that you realize that every couple of weeks we're on a call and we're drilling down on these proposed legislations. 1:20, we will be closed for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. And let's see, Port Commission work session TBD 129. That'd be the second 2 weeks after here. Going to work with Glenn Jr. We may be having a second workshop for budget specific purposes. Not sure January is going to be, we'll be ready for January, but February could be good. Could be better. So also along the lines of February, we were talking about what would the commission feel about moving that February meeting. Sorry, that's the March meeting. No, thank you. Mission to Washington is gonna kind of muck up the commission schedule. I think I did it last year remote as well, but if there's any interest in availability, we probably like to bump that March meeting a week out. So instead of the 12th, when we're in DC, potentially the 19th, or a week early if we don't do a second meeting in January.
So are we doing a second meeting in January? I mean, at one point it was being scheduled for the 22nd, is that right?
No, I'm sorry, that if we were doing a second in January, it should be 2 weeks from today, which would be the 29th.
Right, okay. I mean, I was surprised that there were 2 weeks back to back, but.
And I messed up because February and March, their days line up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, if we move the meeting in March to the 5th of March instead of the 12th.
I just need to get it on my calendar.
I'll be on an airplane on the 19th, so I won't be able to.
5th is better for me too. The third one. is really tough.
Okay. March 5th wouldn't work for you, or the
5th is fine. On the 19th, I'll be on a plane, so I won't.
okay,
It's whatever.
5th, March 5th. Okay.
Which means in February, if you bump the February meeting to the middle again.
Well, yeah, normal schedule would be the 12th in February.
Oh, no, that'd be all right. That's
Yeah.
nothing bad.
It only gets fuzzy if we try to do a workshop, which we don't have to do a workshop on a Wednesday. If we want to do a workshop, we notice that we could do it, during the day or another evening. So,
February's famous for snow and ice. So.
yeah, okay. So March, we've decided to move to the 5th.
Probably should change that in my calendar.
Okay. Thank you, commissioners. Let's see, that's all our report. So the manager reports attached. If you have any questions on that, please reach out or ask now.
Any questions on Sean's report or the manager's report? Okay, we'll start with commissioner reports. Nick, you want to start?
Have a ton to report. Appreciate everybody's updates. That's about it.
Well, I appreciate the manager's reports greatly. That helps save a lot of time. Get us up to speed. I also appreciate Lacey's knowledge of the airport, because when you say what happened 20 years ago, realizing she got the assignment last year, that's pretty good.
It's a quick study.
Yeah.
That's it.
I don't have any report. Again, I like everything that we're getting from our staff. It's really helpful.
Well, I will report that I've become very interested in some information that we've been gathering through PNWA about disaster preparedness, and really glad to hear that we're already starting to work on that. And watching what's going on in Southern California, and having lived there for many, many years, always thinking that the disaster was going to be an earthquake and instead it's a fire. It's like, wow. And how ready are we? And my main concern is how ready are we to facilitate what's going to be necessary for the people to even know where all of our people are. You know, there are just so many questions that come to mind, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how we approach this and how we determine what our priorities are, because obviously there's going to be money involved in getting ready for these things. And how prepared is our county? Because it really doesn't do us any good to be the lone island. We need to have coordinated efforts. And yeah, it's time. It's time that we address these things. And, you know, just learning things like functional recovery, a word I'd never heard of before in this last PNWA meeting, where we had experts talking about earthquake preparedness. And functional recovery is how soon can your building be stabilized? How soon can your operations be ready to go back into work? You know, and there's lots of information out there and lots of work that's already been done. So it isn't like we have to reinvent the wheel, but it's, again, how do you sift through all the information that's out there to find what's relevant for us and how do we implement it? So that's where my thoughts are right now.
Definitely a big challenge.
I shared a little bit with Commissioner Ward over email. Going back a little bit in time, we had some staff working on a business continuity plan, which the idea was that that plan would be a part of the county's emergency operations plan as an appendices to aid us in helping get federal funding in the event of a disaster. So yeah, it's a good job for a planner to work on. However, it stalled out. So there are some documents somewhere that I will locate, and we're working on getting that updated, working with the new Department of Emergency Management Director to make sure that we're not starting at ground zero, reinventing the wheel, using what tools they have, and just at least trying to get added to that plan, which is updated on a 5-year basis. So get in the plan and then retool and think about it and dial it in further for the next update is the goal. So we'll find out when the next submission is and make sure we get added.
Excellent.
Yeah,
And
cool.
with that, oftentimes you have intergovernmental relations with other entities where you can use staff and equipment and things like that. So it should be helpful for the disaster for sure.
All right. I don't have much to report other than to also thank staff for the reports and the excellent work in the last month or so. And I believe we have an executive session.
That's correct.
Read the script.
Is it? Board of Columbia County will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192 sections 2.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion that we amend resolution 2024-04 to increase the dock repair authorization from 1 million to 1.1 million. Does that work?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And there being no further business, meeting adjourned.